even in the second season, we're still for I would say pretty much for all of it, but to a lesser extent later in it, very, very much trying to get back to Earth. I think there comes a certain point, though, when everyone realizes that this is actually an opportunity, that all the stuff that we're surrounding here, and all the secrets that this ship might be holding, might be worth actually fighting for. It might actually be worth something sacrificing for. But I don't know. I mean, we've been here for a year, and it's become home for us too as actors. It's become a very cozy is the wrong word, but I don't know. We step in here, and I think all of us feel a little more in our element actually than we do when we go out on location. I mean, this just feels like home base. I think from the beginning, I think Scott's story has been one of growth, hopefully, sometimes growing, sometimes taking a few steps back. I think tapping his potential, and we see that continue in the second season. I think in my head, I think he's slowly starting to find a family here. You know, he's always been someone who didn't have a family, and he's got a dad now. Speaking of here he is.
We're spending more time in these characters than you are in your real world, and I realize, I'm an actor. I've been around for 25 years, and you do a project for 2-3 months, you inhabit that space, and then it's gone. It's over with. You're moving on, and now you inhabit another part of you. So to spend 2 years in this sort of setting, in this dynamic with these characters' mindsets, has been really challenging, for lack of a better word. I think it's a real interesting dynamic. As soon as you step onto the set, you immediately have, for me, there's a sense of there's a weight, there's a desperation, there's an anxiety, it's not like coming home in any way. It's like,
but that is so interesting. Because the way I answered the question is and maybe it's me starting to reflect Scott's experience a little bit. This is
coming home for you.
Yeah, a little bit more like, hey, I'm in my element. Yeah. When I walk in here, which is kind of
but that kind of makes sense. I think it is great, and I think that for me, the reason is because it can never be at home, and not just for me. I'm aware that I mean, you'd have to be a fool not to understand that. As much as Rush wants to stay, that the majority of people would love to be home with their loved ones in their own space, in their own beds, having their own, all the things that have been taken away from them. I mean, who are we kidding? So it's home in the perspective that this is the character is easier to inhabit, but the actual headspace sometimes is like, oh God, I got to go into that thing again, if that makes sense.
Dark.
Yeah, it's dark. One of the things that I've always liked about the creation of the show was that we were always meant to be the protagonist and the antagonist, and that duality in life, to me, is what makes us beautiful. You can't have the good without the bad, the dark without the light, and that's true of every person on the ship. So there's going to be times where everyone should question. You're going to, as you would in real life. This is not about characters trying to be liked on a TV show. These are people trying to create a real situation.
I think in the first season, it became so much for him is I will do whatever I've got to do to get back so I can be a father to that kid. It's the chance that I've got now to be a family man, to create the family that I never had growing up. I mean, Scott, if you look at him, he's a guy who was very, very young. Both his parents are killed. When he's 16, the guy that's raising him dies of alcoholism, interestingly enough. As far as our relationship goes with that, right? And then he, in his mind, for a long time, was involved in the abortion of a child, which for a slightly, probably more than slightly religious person, is a very, very, very heavy blow. And so I think now he realizes too late that he's got this chance to be a dad. And I think a lot of first season is subconsciously, how do I get back to that? How do I get back to that? And season 2 is about, am I still trying to get back to there, or do I need to reconcile myself with what I've got here and make the most out of this?
The biggest moment for Young, I think, in that whole season 1 was the baby. Underneath all that armor, underneath all that wall, underneath all that trained military man who's been programmed, was a man who never had a chance to have a child, who lost his love, blew that, had another chance at love, blew that, and then this life represents a spark, a light that's gone. This man is, started off very much like the movie, the Kurt Russell. I think the first thing he's doing is like thinking about suicide. It almost had that original Stargate film. He starts off in a very, very dark place. That was the light that was going to come to. That would be the best possibility, even though he would be very weary of wanting to raise a child under these circumstances. The idea of it has huge implications for him, and almost like a saving grace, if you will, in his own mind, obviously. And that's why I think the relationship with Scott was kind of almost parental, in that he's almost the son that he didn't have and wish he had, and loves everything about him in that very first season, as far as his character and all that stuff. And there is that relationship there. The dynamic was the Colonel is the number one man, and he's under the Colonel, and that was the dynamic. Not so much a worship thing, just the respect that's inherently taught in that military situation. And one of the elements that I love about it is that everything that those rules don't necessarily apply anymore when you're floating in a tin can in the middle of nowhere. Time is passing by, you've been stripped of everything, you start questioning your own identity. As we go into season 2, we start getting more into the depths of their minds and the psychology behind everyone, and how that impacts all the relationships, if that makes any sense. So I think it's just,
Yeah, I totally feel what you're saying there. It's like we have to, now that we're out here in this really, really, really isolated environment, we have to reinvent these relationships, and we have to reinvent what the military relationship is to civilians. We have to reinvent what the command structure out here means. How fluid is it, or how strict does it need to be?